Upasana.
Yeah, so we this is a working title that we put together for our project. But yeah, we'll probably talk more in the next slide. But yeah, we're playing with the idea of human gesture and like computational gesture, but we'll talk about it in the next one.
And it was similar to what Thomas and Ambika and Naili's team were. This kind of emerged from our Miro board and finding the common ground. Diane.
Ah, yes. Yeah, so we sort of felt that the care must be taken for the future of linguistic AI technologies, and that they must be like inclusive, encompassing diverse languages and unique cultural nuances. And this sort of came about when working with the GTP3 during the fellowship, which is a natural language generator with the AI machine learning tool. And the English was the only model. The only models were all in English, and the multilingual modules were quite poor. So yes, the why. Do you want to talk about the why, Upasana?
So one of the things that we realized is the disconnect that is there between machine and human, and in order to try to find ways to connect, language is something. A lot of languages are getting lost currently. Of course, it's going very fast, and we weren't really planned for that. But what's happening is there is a constant duality, and we are both. All of us were talking about finding that gray area and making sure that we can bridge that. So bringing together various aspects, like what you see on the screen.
Yeah, we felt that there's an urgency to preserve a diversity of language and storytelling practices, and wanted to sort of play with that. So yeah, what we planned to make was like an interactive storytelling tool, using human gesture to sort of trigger like current conversations around climate crisis, Anthropocene, etc. The gestures we are using are from the Natya Shastra, which are used to tell stories, celebrating nature and sort of environment. So we thought we wanted to take on some of those, but we'll talk about that later. Sorry, it's going super fast. So the how, we're going to use Teachable Machine, and we're going to train it on 6 hand mudra gestures, and import the model to P5.js and trigger animated elements and affect sound, display text when the user performs one of the gestures. And we're thinking these elements, we're going to play with image synthesis to create some of these visual elements, which will take inspiration from the natural world. So Upasana, do you want to take one?
So yeah, we chose these ones because a lot of the old performances and art forms were always in sync with the environment and the world it came from. So we chose these ones which are rooted in some way or have other contemporary meanings to them. So each one of them, we worked out various current meanings which are there, like in Zoom, we say, can you hear me? Yeah, all that. And we take that into consideration and as well. And when we are, you want to talk about the input, Diane, that you tested with this? Yeah.
So this is just the Teachable Machine input. So we trained it on the gestures, and then the output, this is a very, very basic, it's not representative of what it would look like, but it would take the form more as a performance of the user. But so basically we found out that the Teachable Machine is not very good at gesture perception. So it's not necessarily, but we'll get to that at the last slide. Shayak, do you want to talk about this?
Yes, as a process of learning how to fit, nurture, or culture the mission, a series of interacting sound tapestry we're going to build this time, and the input will be mainly the gesture, data, and inspiration put by human, and the output will be based on the beautiful and the uncertain nature of machine. One of the demo we have built. Okay, now let's go to the next part.
But what we were deciding is that all three of us have very different aesthetics in the fields that we work in. And we would find ways of merging those and using the machine to interface for that as well. So that's something that Diane, me, as well as Shayak were discussing in terms of visual language is something that we will need to jam and work out, because this is finally something that will be a story. The idea is to bring in the various stories which are getting lost, possibilities. Right now with Teachable Machine, it is of course very limited, but we are looking at if it could become a repository for gesture, and not just, Natya Shastra could be the starting point, but that it could open up to someone from another culture responding with what it means to them, and the cross pollination that can happen through gesture, and free it from language barriers, or and really make it easy for us to have larger conversations.
Yeah, but sharing and keeping the keeping the language alive of these sorts of gestures, and using them as a storytelling tool in that way. But we know it will be more of a performative in its form at the moment. It will only work as a sort of a performative tool because of the nature of training the model on a specific hand with a specific background, etc. So there's a bit of a issue with it being universally available as an online app that will work successfully, if that makes sense, at this time. So we would hope to think of other ways of doing that if we were to take it beyond the fellowship. So yes.
Thank you.
At a tech level, you could probably get that to work on the Connect and kind of 3D depth simmers, right? As a technical bet.
I was thinking
I
like
can imagine
leap.
that's solvable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking leap motion, but or something like this. But yeah.
It just seems awesome. I would just say, like, I can imagine as a viewer how fun it would be to go and see these and say, try these things out. And then when I sort of figure out how to do those hand motions, the magic happens as well visually and audibly. So anyways, I'm very excited to see the piece.
Yeah. Any other suggestion?
I saw that link that Irini just sent for us.
Yeah.
Have a look at that as well. It's on the chat. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I will keep dropping some links there if you, in case you're interested to check. But yeah, it's great, the presentation so far. So, really exciting work.
We are looking at something which we can do within the timeframes and the constraints that we have, and try to find a middle ground for all our practices, as well as the new stuff that we are getting from here, which is so exciting. But that also opens up possibilities and then makes us want to be very ambitious and hope for maybe I don't know, a Wikipedia of gestures where people could also feed in their own inputs. And then maybe we could have groupings. I don't know if, these are just things, I don't know the possibilities right now, but.
I mean, the other thing is like that, because I find like something which is really interesting in both what you've been working on and also the previous group. It's also the process that you obviously, we all know that is a very tight kind of turnaround that you have here, but the process and some of the ideas that your different practices bring together are really interesting. And so what you've been talking about, like all of you, there are some really exciting kind of things here. So maybe one way of thinking about it in the longer term is there a way of documenting what you're talking about? Maybe you can create a collaborative article, or or a blog post or something that you can publish something together. So this, it's something that maybe it's a starting point rather than just seeing the end at the end of this fellowship.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other feedback from the fellows?
Yeah, we have 5 minutes, so.
Cool. Well, we went very quickly, so we could explain a little bit more. The slides sort of ran away before we could really talk about what we were thinking.
Maybe we can listen the audio demo we have prepared.
Yes, that'd be great.
Manan can go back to the page 9. Can you please? Thank you.
Is this the one?
Yeah, this is the file. Yes, you can play it. For some of you, it may sound a bit intense, but we are trying to build the idea all over according to the gesture of the hand, according to the x-axis and y-axis. So this is still in work in progress, and we're trying to make it more cutting edge in the within the possible time. Thank you.
It's a really great project. I actually had a question for the group. I quite like that you guys are creating sort of a repository of gestures. So a couple of these different things that you could look at. One is this, it's very similar to capturing bodies for motion capture. And gestures are one part of it, right? Like the larger conversation would be how things move from two-dimensional filmmaking to three-dimensional volumetric, and that's going to be the future, whether we like it or not. In some cases, not all of them. But one of the things that I really like is the Black Movement project that I think you guys should look at. It's the exclusive sort of categorizing and archival of Black bodies for motion capture. And there's a lot of I think overlap with some of the things that you guys are talking about, especially when it starts referring to cultural and sort of social specificities. It makes a lot more sense to, we tend to think that categories are the hyper categorization of things are bad, but it's actually really good because it just makes things more diverse. It makes the models more diverse. It makes teachable machine or runway or whatever you're using. It makes it more diverse, but you're doing it by breaking the machine. And that's the only way to make these machine learning models go forward. You have to break them. Because if you don't break them, then they're just you're being confined within the parameters of code written by some person who doesn't really have a better understanding of the world. And it's the same with GPT-3, it's the same with anything OpenAI does or anything these guys do. But yeah, I just want to put that link, I think, in the chat. It's a pretty good resource. It's multiple people I know personally are doing similar things. I was just waiting to see where the two projects were going, because obviously it's overlaps with the first group as well, and notions of indigeneity and kind of creating databases, but also being very, very cognizant about who hosts the database and where it's hosted. That is really important. As long as you leave the ownership with the community, fantastic. But the minute it becomes, like you see with GPT-3, Microsoft has exclusive use. I don't understand why that is, but it's just something that, I don't know, maybe it's something to think about.